Hi everyone, I am here to talk to you again about short rows. This time we are going to be learning about German short rows. This is a different technique for working your short rows. The most common technique are the wrap and turn short rows, which I demonstrated in a previous tutorial. So this is just a different option for working your short rows. I really like the German short rows because they seem more invisible in the fabric than the wrap and turn short rows. So let's go ahead and get started. I have already put 2 short rows in here so you can kind of take a peek. See if we can get a nice view here. This is a short row here. You can see it blends in pretty invisibly, although like the wrap and turn, it does sort of lean to the side a bit. And there's another one in here. This one actually looks even almost a little bit more invisible. It doesn't look super twisted either way. So let's go ahead and start working on these. The German short row is not quite as fiddly as the traditional wrap and turn short row, but getting the hang of it may take you a couple of tries. It also is not quite as bulky as the wrap and turn short row because you're not adding an extra wrap of yarn in there. So it can make your fabric a little bit smoother, and that's again why it is a bit more invisible. So I'm just going to work a bit into the fabric. All right, now we're ready. Now for the wrap and turn short row that you may be familiar with, we wrap our stitch and then turn our work. For the German short row, the first thing we're going to do is turn the work. So you reach the point where you want to create your short row and you just turn. Then we're going to do our bit of finagling. So for the German short row, rather than wrapping the stitch, what you're going to do is slip this first stitch from your left needle to the right with your yarn in front and slipping purlwise. Then you are going to pull the working yarn tight. And you'll see what that does is pull 2 loops of that stitch that you just slipped up onto the needle. That's what you want. So you're going to pull tight until you see both of those loops up on your needle. Then you're going to bring your yarn forward and continue to work. All right, so I'll stop for a second just to show you where it is. You can see right here, those 2 loops coming from 1 stitch. Now we're going to work back a little bit, and I'll show you how to do that on the other side. It is essentially the same. All right. So remember, instead of doing our stitch maneuvering first, we turn first. All right. And now we're going to do the same thing again. With the yarn in front, we're going to slip the first stitch from the left to the right needle. Then we're going to pull the yarn tight until we have 2 loops being pulled up onto that right needle. And then we're just going to continue to work. So I will work a couple of stitches and then show you. You can see that 2 loops of yarn pulled up onto the right needle from 1 stitch. And what we're going to call this, you'll commonly see it referred to as a double stitch. Of course, it's not really. As I said, it's just 2 loops of the same stitch on the needle, but it certainly looks like 2 stitches, and we're going to call it a double stitch. You might commonly see this abbreviated in your knitting patterns as DS or MDS for double stitch or make double stitch. And the best thing perhaps about the German short rows is that they're easier to, I don't want to say fix, but let's go with fix for now. When you get back to your double stitch, you're just going to knit both loops together as a single stitch. So there's no picking up a wrap, there's no moving your needles all over the place to try to maneuver. So to resolve, maybe we'll use the word resolve. To resolve the double stitch, you just knit the two loops together like one stitch. And now you can see the fabric. It looks pretty seamless. So I'll knit a couple more and we'll demonstrate again. All right, so let's say here's where we want to work our next short row. I'll turn first, slip the first stitch with the yarn in front, pull tight so the two loops are pulled up onto the right needle, then bring my yarn around and continue working on the wrong side. So I'm going to work back to the other double stitch that we haven't resolved yet. Okay, here we go. You can see the two loops of the stitch up on the needle here. And like we did on the right side, we're just going to work them together. And since this is the wrong side, we purl them. And I'm going to keep working for a few more stitches so we can demonstrate each of these one more time. Okay, let's say we want to insert our short row here. We turn first, we slip the next stitch, the yarn in front, pull the yarn tight to pull those two loops onto the right needle, and then we keep working. All right, here we are at our double stitch again. Again, you're just going to knit them together. Those two loops of the same stitch that we're referring to as a double stitch. And now I'm going to work to the end. I'm going to work back to the other stitch where we worked the short row to show that again, and then we'll take a look at our fabric and see how things blend in. Okay, we're back at our double stitch. You can see the two loops are up on that left needle. We're just going to knit them together, or excuse me, purl them together because we're on the wrong side. Then we're going to continue on to the end, and you can look at the fabric and see how well the German short rows blend in. Okay. All right, so here is our fabric with several of these German short rows worked. First thing you can see is that we've created additional rows in the middle that aren't on the ends. That is the point of short rows, and you can see that whereas if you used maybe a staggered bind off to create this shape, this is nice and smooth. There's no, it's not like a step. It's like a curve. Now, how about the short rows? How did they blend in? Can you see them? I would say they are more invisible than the wrap and turn short rows. I can definitely identify where they have been worked if I'm really looking for it. Another one here. Over here, you can see that working that double stitch and the knit two together or purl two together to resolve it does cause the stitches to bend a little bit in one direction or the other, but overall this is very seamless and nice smooth piece of fabric. It's going to look even better after it's blocked. It gives you the nice shape that you want. And of the two techniques, I would definitely say the German short rows are the more invisible one. You can substitute German short rows in a pattern that calls for wrap and turn short rows. The way to do that, when you are reading a pattern that calls for the wrap and turn short rows, it will say work X number of stitches, wrap and turn. So instead of wrapping and turning, you go ahead and work the next stitch that should be wrapped, then turn your work, and then you work the double stitch over that stitch on the opposite side. So you're just going to work one extra stitch instead of wrapping and turning it. Then you're going to turn and do your maneuvering to work the double stitch. Easy as pie. I hope you found this tutorial useful and are feeling confident enough to use German short rows in your next project.